I've also got another job where I work for UAE Emirates cycling team as one of their medical practitioners.
So it's made a huge difference working with you for my training.
But if you want to really improve, what we need to do is to understand how Jona's physiology actually works. Although the engine is small, it's pretty efficient.
So it'd be very interesting to see what I'd be capable of on like a 15, 20-minute climb.
The more important thing is that he keeps enjoying his riding.
Yeah, I mean, first two big bunch races where I haven't been dropped is a pretty good milestone.
Yep. Are we going to change the YouTube channel name? Super cool with Jonah is when we get those videos, I can then go back and actually look at the whole race.
What do you think my potential for the next 2.5 years of school I have? What do you think is possible? Hi guys, this is a video introducing my coach. Hi David, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, Jonah. Yeah, my name's David. I'm originally from South Africa. I'm a medical doctor. Um, Special interest, and I've done some extra studying in sports medicine. So I run a sports medicine practice in South Africa. I've also got another job where I work for UAE Emirates cycling team as one of their medical practitioners. I'm not a coach on the team, but I do some coaching privately. And when I saw your YouTube channel, I was pretty intrigued by someone who had put up a channel called Jona the Dropped. I and I got in contact and asked if you wanted some help with your coaching.
So it's made a huge difference working with you for my training.
That's great. I'm pleased that you've seen some benefit. Um, Obviously, when a coach first takes on an athlete, it's quite an interesting process. If we talk just a little bit about the coaching process, um, what generally, especially a young athlete, and when I looked at your files, you had been training um, kind of like you would race. So every session you went out as hard as you could, and that initially is a fairly effective way of training to get some improvement. But if you want to really improve, what we need to do is to understand how Jona's physiology actually works. So if you look at an athlete, um, there's various aspects to do with how your specific physiology works. And so we've been doing some testing with you. You've done some races, and we've looked at some numbers, and now we're starting to understand the specifics of what your physiology is capable of. Once we understand that completely, and as you know, it's still a bit of a process. I still ask you to do things every now and then, but once we understand where that physiology is, we can then target specific training sessions to build up areas which might be a bit weaker, areas that you need to work on. And so that's what we've started um, to do with you. This is a process that doesn't take a few weeks. Takes a few months, a few years, but it's been really great working with you, Jonah.
It's amazing to hear that.
Like, I'd be curious to know, like, is there anything so far that's interesting about Jona in terms of now that you've actually started by seeing the videos and now you've seen the data?
Yeah, well, I think what was great is you got sponsored a power meter, and that really unlocks a whole lot of data that we can use to start to understand um, where your basically where your engine sits. Um, Quite interestingly, for someone who's Jona the Dropped, immediately when we started getting some of the data, some of the power numbers, we realized that actually, although the engine is small, it's pretty efficient. So you've probably heard of the term functional threshold power or critical power. That's the power that you can theoretically produce continuously for about 40 to 60 minutes. And Jona's functional threshold power at the moment is sitting at about 240 watts, which as an absolute number doesn't necessarily jump out at one. But when you consider Jona's weight at 50 kilograms, and often in cycling, the watts per kg is more important than your absolute power, especially if you're talking about long races that includes climbs. Then we're sitting at 4.8 to 5 watts per kg, and that's a significant engine. So I think that was one of the first interesting aspects to discover on Jona's physiology, was that on a watts per kg basis, he's got a good engine. One of his problems is that the races that he's doing at the moment really are more geared towards people who can produce absolute power, because these sort of short circuit races or criterium type races, even the road races that Jona's been doing, haven't really included any long significant climbs where his physiology will start to shine. So I'm looking forward to getting him into a race that really suits him and seeing what he can do.
I mean, yeah, certainly the races that I've been doing, so the entire cycling that I've been doing is definitely too flat for my weight. So it'd be very interesting to see what I'd be capable of on like a 15-20 minute climb in an actual race situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, as I say, where your physiology is geared. You like one of the, if you're looking at sort of WorldTour type riders, you definitely sort of fit more into the climber type of profile rather than a puncher or a sprinter. And yeah, your physiology would really come to the fore after 15, 20, even a 30-minute type of climb, where for you going at 220 watts, so 4.5 watts per kg up the climb would be fairly comfortable. The under 17 who weighs 80 kilograms, because he's got big muscles, big sprinter muscles, he's got big shoulders, so he can really rip those handlebars when he's sprinting. He now has to be producing, 5 times 80. He's got to be producing 400 watts to sit with you where you're producing 220. And as I say, that's where the differences start counting.
That's certainly been seen even in my age group with even shorter climbs, where maybe not 5 watts per kilo for hours, but more people putting 7 or 8 for maybe 10 minutes. The bigger guys do tend to fall behind. But it's more the people in the 60 to 70 kilo range that are doing well on these medium length climbs. Just need those real long ones.
Yeah, sure. So, and that'll come. Obviously, we need to seek out a race where we can see what you can do, because this at the moment is all fairly theoretical. But for me, all of this data and watts per kg and all of this is really interesting, and it's been super working with Jona. The more important thing is that he keeps enjoying his riding, and I can see from his videos, from how closely he follows the training plan. He's certainly got a big passion for cycling. So really, we need to make sure that we don't overload you with technicality and take out some of the joy of just going and riding your bike. So we need to balance those two aspects. One, trying to keep improving, trying to do the right stuff from a scientific coaching perspective, but at the same time, making sure that you still enjoy your riding that you can go and ride with your mate, that you don't have to look at the power meter endlessly. And if I give you a session where you've got 3 times 5 minute efforts, and if that day you just really don't feel like doing them because you're riding with your mates, that's okay as well.
I mean, yeah, but I've certainly found working with the training plan and all the sort of tailored different rides, I find it sort of another kind of enjoyment, just like knowing that I'm training with a much higher, improving at a faster rate than I would be without it, and that certainly brings a certain kind of enjoyment to me.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I think your races that you did over the last weekend, you certainly showed some good improvements. Super chuffed with the way that went, and I think you were too. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, first 2 big bunch races where I haven't been dropped is pretty good milestone.
Yep. Are we going to change the YouTube channel name?
Nothing else apart from Jona the Dropped has a nice ring to it, so I reckon we're keeping it.
No, I agree. I think everyone likes an underdog, and I think See This Journey is actually pretty cool. So don't change the channel name.
Well, yeah, I can't change the channel name until I drop everybody. There's still going to be someone who drops me.
Okay.
So before this whole coaching thing, I just kind of used Strava and the different segments it has to track performance. But ever since Training Peaks has come along, it's been quite different.
Yeah. So Training Peaks is the platform that most of the professional teams use. There are some other software platforms which are um, being developed at the moment, including one in UAE Emirates. But it's a lot more of a scientific type of basis to your training. So just for people who don't know Training Peaks, um, it's a platform where the coach can prescribe certain training sessions. And when I say prescribe, we'll prescribe durations, power targets, if they're doing any effort. So as I say, we might be concentrating on, for example, a lactate shuttle block. And so we would be giving Jona a session, and that would be something like a decent 25, 30-minute warm up, and then some efforts where he would be going above his threshold power. And what that would do is body would then produce lactate. We would then drop the power, and his body would then clear the lactate, and we repeat that. So, and some of these sessions can get quite tough, as I think Jona found out on Tuesday or Wednesday last week. So 1 minute really hard at 280 watts, and then 1 minute at 180 watts, and then 1 minute at 280 watts. And so on Training Peaks, he will get the prescription. He'll see what I've put for the day. He'll go out and do the ride, and then his cycling computer will upload that to Training Peaks. Jona will add a comment. He'll tell me how tough he felt the session was. And then I can have a look at the data. Really, that's to see did he do what we asked. And as I said, and I want to just say it again, if he didn't, that's not a problem. But it is nice when the athlete does what's prescribed. Can gain some insights from the actual power numbers, heart rate, and often, quite importantly, is how the athlete found that session. So he will give it a score out of 10, where 1 is basically completely relaxed, and 10 would be the hardest effort he's ever done. And so it helps the coach to gauge where the athlete is with that training. Training Peaks also is quite good at monitoring load. So if we talk about load, what we know is that your body has a certain ability to recover. And if we talk briefly about the training process, I give Jona a session, say a lactate shuttle session. We're targeting a very specific part of his physiology and that lactate clearance. But those changes happen when his body's recovering. So we give the stimulus, which is the session, and then we get the adaptation, which happens during recovery. Now, everybody has a different ability to recover. So Training Peaks is very good at managing that load. So it will give me a metric called chronic training load and an acute training load. And basically it balances how much load I'm giving him with how fit he is at the moment. And we use those factors to make sure that you're fresh for a race. So we would drop off the acute training. So we taper into a race. If we're doing an endurance block, we will gradually, over a couple of weeks, build that chronic training load, probably by like 10% a week. So Training Peaks, yeah, it's an invaluable tool, not only to log all your training rides, but to effectively get the data out of those sessions.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen just from your comments on some of the races that I did during iBuilt that you can just sort of take a look at the graph and the map, and then people of your skill set can basically figure out exactly what happened in the race just by looking at the graphs and the map, which is not a skill everybody can do.
Well, as I say, you'll soon be able to interpret those power numbers exactly like I can. What's super cool with Jona is when we get those videos, I can then go back and actually look at the whole race and see what your tactics were and where you went perhaps too hard into the red, and then we can talk through that and gain a few more insights. So yeah, I'm looking forward to those iBuilt videos.
How similar in terms of time and different zones is the training you're giving me compared to what, say, someone might give a pro?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I guess there's two ways to answer it. But the basic answer is that the process is exactly the same. So if we had a pro athlete, we would need to fully understand his physiology. And obviously, once you've worked with a pro athlete, he's been an athlete for 8 or 10 years. He's got data on Training Peaks for 10 years. So it's a lot easier to understand that physiology when you first take on a pro athlete compared to somebody who's new to Training Peaks and is still sort of building up that database. But as I said, the process would be the same. So we would understand his physiology. The next thing we have to understand, both with a pro and an amateur athlete, is what is his training resources? And by that, I mean, how much time does he have? How quickly does he recover? So how much training can we give him? Then we need to understand what his goals for the season are. You know, is he targeting the Belgian Classics, or is he targeting the Tour de France? Because those training sessions will be quite different. And once we have those factors, then we build a training plan very similar to we would for an amateur athlete. It just means that the physiology and the goals and the training resources would be slightly different. So, for example, if we were doing a endurance block for Jona, so we were concentrating on long endurance rides, zone 2 type of ride, we would want you to do a 3.5 hour ride, like you did yesterday, for example. Whereas the rider who's targeting the Tour de France, he's going to need to do a 6-hour ride. But also mainly in zone 2, but he's got more training resources, he's got more time to recover, and perhaps he has physiology that's better adapted to riding for 6 hours. When we're talking about adolescent athletes, so Jona, if I remember you, 15, turning 16.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep. So we need to take those sort of factors into account as well. So not only are you getting adaptations from training, you're getting adaptations because you're maturing, you're growing, and so all of those factors affect the amount of training and the sort of monitoring that we need to do. I think you probably remember we did some measurements on you, and we worked out that you probably at the moment growing the fastest that you're going to grow. And so that has some training implications, because what we know is that when you reach what we call your peak height velocity, you're a little bit more prone to certain injuries. So we wouldn't want to, for example, do too much low cadence work because we might injure your knee. So I guess in answering your question, how different would your training be to a pro? Really, the difference is that we're looking at your individual physiology, adaptations, age, growth, all of those sort of things, and adapting a program. But the general program would be the same. So, an endurance block, some strength work, some lactate work, some VO2 max work. Just the amount when we give it would be slightly different.
Right, yeah. Makes sense.
Jona, what are your goals for the rest of the year?
I want to be top 20 in nationals, I think. Nothing crazy, no off the front breakaways to score the win. But yeah, I want to be top 20 at the national road champs.
Okay. And I guess one other role for a coach is to, check, is to give athletes achievable goals. And I certainly think that's an achievable goal. Certainly your numbers are improving like week by week. Normally with a more established athlete, we might look at sort of redoing FTP tests or critical power tests every 3 or every 6 months, something like that. Your numbers seem to change like weekly. So as I say, it's all possible, huh?
Well, I surely hope it is. So what do you think my potential for the next 2.5 years of school I have? What do you think's possible?
So very difficult question. So if you look at the sports medicine community or the coaching community, there's big debates about talent identification and what age group, if someone's doing X at this age, does that mean he'll be a pro, etc., etc. And to be honest, it's actually a very difficult prediction to make. What we know is that at your age group, what often happens is the early maturers get a leg up because their chronological age might be 15, but their maturity age might be 17. And so they'll be winning all the races. Those kids often don't end up being top athletes, because what happens is when everyone else catches up, suddenly they're not quite as good as they thought they were. It used to be easy and now it's difficult. And there's a big fall off in that type of athlete. Jona almost fits into the opposite section, where he's been a bit of a late developer, and now he's getting a lot of the benefits of maturity. And if we look at your numbers, 4.85 watts per kg as a 15-year-old, that's impressive. What we know is there's lots of kids who will have numbers like that, and one or two of them might make it as a professional athlete, because there's a whole lot of other stuff. As important as your numbers is your mentality. Do you enjoy the sport? Lots of people will have the numbers, but actually they don't enjoy spending 6 hours Saturday and Sunday riding their bike. So what we can say is you've ticked one of the boxes. There's a whole lot more boxes that need to be ticked. As long as you're enjoying it, I think you keep going. Is there a chance you could make a career out of cycling? There's a chance. But more importantly, you enjoy it. You don't throw all your eggs in one basket. You don't leave school early like we see some of these early developers. They think they're going to be the next world champion, leave school early to concentrate on a sport. That's almost always a mistake. So, we stick to the process and we see where we get. What we can say is, at the moment, you tick one of the boxes, and that's you've got an engine that we can work with.
That's reassuring. I've really, really appreciated your coaching so far, and I really look forward to what we can do in the future.
That's great, yeah, and it's been good to kind of get to know you and work with you, and let's keep having fun and see where you get to.
Let's do that.